Hello everyone and welcome to another WitchWood card reviews. Today I've got another 4 cards to show you, including one which I think is a really strong card, one of my favourites so far I think. So let's get straight into it. Starting with a Hunter card, this one's called Dusk Hunter. It costs 3 mana, it has 2 attack and 5 health, it's a rare card. It always has stealth, but it also has this new text that we've seen earlier on with this expansion which says, each turn this is in your hand, swap its attack and health. So basically, when you draw it, it will be a 2/5, and at the end of that turn, it changes to a 5 attack, 2 health minion that you can play the next turn. And if you don't play it, it switches back to a 2/5, for example. Now, I don't really like these types of cards. It does give you flexibility, and we've seen it in Druid where you can choose one. So you can either choose to make it a 2/5 or a 5/2, for example. But in Hunter, and with this mechanic, I don't think it's as good because although it gives you extra flexibility, it also can really be restricting if it's in the wrong kind of form on the turn that you want to play it. So if you're playing well, you will have in your hand, you will have cards that you want to play on 3 and cards that you want to play on 4. Now, if it comes around to turn 3 and this has got the stats the wrong way around, you'll have to wait till the next turn. But then the next turn you want to be playing your 4-drop and not this. So those kind of things I don't like, and I don't think it would work too great. Now, in its standard form as a 2/5, it's a 3 mana 2/5. It's a carrion grub, which we've seen in the game before, which wasn't too bad. It didn't see a lot of play, but the reason it did see play was because it was a beast. So you could adapt it with the Crackling Razormaw, and you could also hit it with the Houndmaster, for example. And because it had 5 health, it would usually stick around for at least 1 turn, so that you could then adapt it with or buff it with the other Hunter cards. But this isn't even a beast. I think if you played this on 3 and you play it as a 5/2, so 5 attack and 2 health with stealth, then that does give you some advantages, because it means if they're going to be anything they're going to be playing in 4, you should be able to trade into and kill. You should be able to destroy any taunts that are in the way, and it is effectively, because it's got stealth, it is going to be 5 damage for 3 mana. It can get removed obviously with AoE, but if they don't remove it, it is 5 damage for 3 mana, which can be quite good. But like I said before, I don't like the way that this switches each turn. I think that just makes it more complicated, and because it's only 3 mana, it's not like you're going to plan ahead too far to play this card. So not really a good one for me, to be honest. Next, we've got another Hunter card. This is an epic card called Toxma Hunter, and this one I quite like. It's cost 4 mana, has 2 attack and 4 health. The stats are a little bit low, but it says whenever you play a minion that costs 1, give it poisonous. So that's quite cool, actually. We haven't seen that yet in the game so far, and that allows you to play some really cool sort of 1-drops and just make them poisonous, which is really bad for your opponent, because if they don't have AoE, it's going to make it really frustrating. It does cost 4 mana, so if you're playing this later on in the game, you're going to be able to play a lot of minions. But late on in the game, are you going to have that many 1-drops in your hand? I don't know. I mean, there are ways that you can get 1-drops to make it easier. And for example, if you're playing Quest Hunter as well, you're going to have a lot of 1-drops. So it's a good effect. I think it's very easy for your opponent to get rid of 1-drops for a start. If they've just got AoE, pretty much any AoE will get rid of them. So that does cause some issues. But I think it's proven that poisonous is a really strong kind of effect. It can stop, if your opponent hasn't got any hard removal or AoE, then it can really just make your 1 mana card, can stop them playing a Lich King, for example, or any other big minions. So I quite like it. It might be quite difficult to work, because it is a combo card. You do need to have 1-drops as well to play with it, and it's a fairly weak minion on its own, a 4/2, because it itself doesn't have poisonous. So not a bad card, but again, probably average. It doesn't work with Unleash the Hounds, which would be incredible, but unfortunately they're not 1-cost minions. That is a spell. So we'll see. Maybe if we can get some minions with Rush to work with it as well, then that can be really good as a strong board clear. Just play one of your 1 mana minions with Rush and trade it into one of their 10-drops or 8-drops, for example. So it's a nice idea. one which works in Hunter, I think, and we'll see what sort of cards come out of it and what ones we can play with it. Next, we've got a new card, a rare card, and a spell for Druid. It's called Witching Hour. It costs 3 mana, and what it does is it summons a random friendly beast that died this game. Okay, so this card can be really strong, and it will be even stronger when I show you the next card after this one. But I quite like the idea of it because it's something new for the Druid class. There aren't that many beasts that are good in Druid, though, that you can play. I think Grizzled Guardian is a really good one to play with this. That's the 8 mana 3/5 which summons recruits 2 minions with the Death Rattle. I think that would work quite well if you can play that, and then for 3 mana you can resummon it. But often beasts don't really find their way into Druid decks too often. But if you do and you design it specifically around it, I think there's a lot of good uses for this, and the cost of only 3 mana, then you can get some really strong plays. And why, I'll show you this next card, why I think Witching Hour will be really strong, is when you take a look at this next card. This one's called WitchWood Grizzly, and it is a neutral minion, but it is a beast. Now, this card is almost the complete opposite of a Twilight Drake. It does cost 1 more mana, it's 5 mana. It has 3 attack and 12 health, so it's a huge stat line. It's got Taunt, but it has the Battle Cry of losing 1 health for each card in your opponent's hand. So rather than gaining 1 health for each card in your hand like the Twilight Drake does, you lose 1 health for each card in your opponent's hand. So this is quite clearly an anti-aggro card. So if you're playing against an aggro deck, often they will not have many cards in their hand, maybe 2 or 3. So for 5 mana, you could potentially get this out as a... I mean, if they don't have any cards in their hand, it's a 5 mana 3/12, but more than likely they're probably going to have 3 or 4 cards in there. So you're playing a 5 mana 3/8 or a 5 mana 3/9, and against an aggro deck, that is so good. That, I mean, it's going to be really difficult. The 3 attack is quite low, but against a lot of aggro decks, that's enough. So let's say you're playing Murloc Paladin, for example, or you're playing Hand Buff Paladin or Token Druid. Not many of their cards that they play have more than 3 health. So being able to play something as strong as this on turn 5 is really, really cool. And what makes this card even better is if you can recruit it from your deck. Now, because it's a beast, it does work, like I said, with the Witching Hour. So if you play this on 5, your opponent kills it. Let's say they've got a lot of the cards in their hand. They could have like 8 or 9 cards in their hand. Then the Witchwood Grizzly is quite low health, but when it dies, you can play Witching Hour. It comes straight back, but when it comes back, it is a 3/12 because it won't summon the Battle Cry. It works exactly the same with Recruit. If you can recruit this out of your deck, which you can with Oaken Heart, then you'll just get the 3/12 stat line. And the reason I like this card so much is because this will fit right into my Hadronox Druid card deck, so Cube Druid deck. And basically Hadronox, when it dies, it summons all of the Taunt minions that you've played. So if you've played Witchwood Grizzly, maybe you've played Witching Hour a couple of times, then you can play Hadronox, and then you'll get a bunch of these Witchwood Grizzlies back. And what's even better is when they come back with Hadronox, they will be 3/12s, and this card will be incredible with Void Ripper, for example. Swapping the attack and health of all minions, just do that and you've got 3 health and 12 attack minions. So I'm really looking forward to trying this card out. It seems very, very powerful. I think they've probably done a lot of testing, and probably during testing they found that most decks that you're playing against have significantly more cards in their hand, so its health is a lot lower. Let's say if you're playing most control decks, you would think by turn 5, depending on what deck it is, obviously, they might have 7 cards in their hand, or 8 cards, for example. And if they do have 7 cards, it's a 5 mana 3/5, which isn't very good with Taunt. But as I said before, recruiting it or healing it with the Priest, or summoning it with Witching Hour in the Druid class, I think this is a card which people will look to put into a lot of their decks. It also works really well in Priest with the card we mentioned yesterday, Lady in White. If you play Lady in White first, suddenly you've got a 5-mana 12/12 with Taunt that you can play onto the board. Obviously, it will lose some health with your opponent's cards, but the 12 attack is extremely useful. So I like this card. Any anti-aggro deck is probably going to play this. I don't see why you wouldn't. So I'm really looking forward to trying that, because I like playing aggro decks sometimes, but I usually like building decks which can stop an aggro deck, like a nice control deck. So putting this one in there will be really cool. Okay, so that's all the cards I've got to show today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be doing another video tomorrow with the new cards that get released tomorrow, so I'll see you then.